All right, everybody, it's Saturday afternoon, getting ready for the main slate. Daily Fantasy Sports MLB, too tight player pool for cash games. So we'll dive into the optimizer, the domination station here at dfsarmy.com. We'll take a look, make sure the ownerships are in place, and if so, we'll rock and roll. We've got some weather concerns. You always want to check those. That shifts ownerships around to some degree. So always be paying attention to that. Be paying attention as lineups confirm. Looks like we've got most of them in except for the very, very late game. Just generally looking, I'm trying to figure. I think Texas has a pretty poor pitching staff that puts Houston in a good spot. I know Kansas City's bad. It puts Minnesota in a decent spot. Milwaukee is a good offense and attacking bad pitching. LA is a good offense this year. The pitching in Oakland isn't terrible. So, you might put some second tier attacks on like Tampa Bay, LA, Minnesota, whatever, but you want to probably put a primary attack on Houston and Milwaukee. They're good offenses going up against bad pitching staffs. So that's where I would expect the ownerships to sort of start to take shape. Now, I don't know if that's going to be the case or not. We leave that in optimal mode. I'm getting ahead of myself. So when I'm sorting by ownerships, that's again, I'm using the consensus of the world to tell me who to pick from, and all I do is narrow it down by unchecking this box and then checking back those that are highly owned. These two pitchers here, Verlander and Woodruff, are great. Montas isn't bad. Probably not a cash game guy. You're going to get the most out of these two here. So one of those two ought to be your choice. Now, when you see a 50-50 split like that, two guys that are almost equally owned, and even a third guy's got now this is now you got to dig in a little bit, and you got to figure who has the upside, who has the safety, who has the water, and then you're just going to have to make a choice. You're just going to have to make a decision. That's okay. We can let the optimizer do it. We can dig in and do our own private research if we want to, off to the side. Maybe find a something that stands out one way or the other. It doesn't look like catchers are important on FanDuel with catcher blending with first base. Yandy Diaz is going to be a play. Ji-Man Choi is going to be a play. Maybe Trey Mancini. That's weird that we're targeting Baltimore with ownership. There must be something cheap going on there that people like. Keston Hiura, I don't probably need to go there, but being that Milwaukee's in a good spot, I will. Now, I would double check his game logs along with Mancini. It looks like Choi and Diaz are okay. They're attacking Baltimore. They're getting the ownership. They're probably cheap. I'm looking for the most consistent guys in a lot of cases. As we've used before, Broso bats a little low. He's up in the middle of the order this time, though, so that's interesting. The optimizer loves him. Now, I don't know if that's an over projection by the optimizer, but I bet he lands in our lineup if we check him in. Urias Bregman's a decent cash game play. I don't know that I'd go down to Taylor Walls. Broso again, only because of that high projection that I'm seeing there. Otherwise, I don't feel like I need him. If the projection's right and he goes off and we get him at lower ownership, that's good. For tournaments and such, cash games, yeah, it helps. But again, if he doesn't go off and then the chalk does, then we made a mistake. And we don't want to make mistakes in cash games too much. You want to be a little bit different, maybe. You can't be afraid to be too terribly different, but you're not going to be different in terms of stacking and going for really low-owned plays intentionally. If you land on one or you see one that makes a lot of sense, it's okay to take a shot or two. But most of the time, these cash games, you want to stay very close to the vest. Correa, definitely a play with Polanco and Urias. Taylor Walls again. I don't know that I'm too hip to that jive. Buxton. Renfro's not a cash play. He's getting a lot of ownership probably because he's cheap and he hits home runs. But he also posts zeros. These are the types of players that I leave out of my player pool a lot. Otani, McCutchen is a little better consistency play than Renfro. Yordan Alvarez, Christian Yelich, Randy Arozarena. Kyle Tucker is another one. Now, if he's streaking, that's a good thing. If not, you can leave him out. Mike Trout always in. Cedric Mullins leading off, not bad. And then a big drop. Brantley's a cash game play. Soto's usually a cash game type of play. Not facing Woodruff, maybe not, but Brantley probably is. So I can leave it alone at about that. We're sitting on 24 players. It's usually where we land, 20 to 24, because we're taking the top 2 or 3 at each position, and we're taking a decent amount of outfielders that are getting, around 20% ownership on the night. That's just enough ownership that we can consider using them in cash games. Again, looking for 2 Rays, 2 Angels, 3 Rays, 3 Rays, 3 Brewers, 2 Angels. That is a tournament type of lineup right there. That's a 3-3-2. Is it okay for cash games? I guess. You might want to swap a guy out here or there, though. You might want to take, like, let's say we got a Trout in there. Let's take Otani out. Kyle Tucker is a little, Brantley would be okay. Put some Houston in that lineup, wherever that lineup went. There's Brantley. A little bit too much on the Rays, but look at how cheap they are. That's the problem. Unless you've got a specific pivot to go to, that is the okay side of ownership. But looking at Milwaukee, it's a lot of bats. A cheap one there's a cheap one there. And McCutchen's cheap. So again, we're just looking at some cheap plays, and that's what allows us to pay up for pitching, which buys us our floor. All we need is these guys to get us, 3 to 9 points. Maybe one guy gets us in the 20 range. As long as these guys don't really post zeros, then we're in a pretty good spot to score between 120 and 150 points. Usually enough to cash. Some nights it takes 130 or so. Some nights it takes a little bit more. But generally speaking, you're doing the right thing. We're 19-8 with this method. That's a good thing. That's where we want to stay. So we'll come back to that in a little bit, but now we know who that player pool is, and we know the kind of lineups that we're going to see probably quite a bit of tonight. And now we can just come back up here. We can check everybody back, and we can worry about 100-man leagues or something like that. We'll talk about DraftKings another time. DraftKings player pool can be very, very different than the FanDuel player pool. Put some randomization on it, go up to tournament mode, maybe even pick up another unique player just to mix and match these lineups a little bit. Let's maybe build about 20 lineups. And now we know what we're looking for in terms of good pitching and bad pitching, staffs. You can dig into the research station. It's a great tool to use. I just automatically know I'm going to want Houston and Milwaukee in most of the lineups that I do. I don't mind them mixing and matching with some Minnesota, with some Tampa Bay, with some LA for sure. These are the teams that I'm going to be most focused on when I'm stacking. Now, for the 100-man league even, I might allow one bat against my hitter. That's not optimal, obviously, because if your hitter hits, a home run or scores points against your starter, often it takes away points from your starter, which makes it kind of fight itself. It's not ideal, but they can score off of the bullpen, and you can still win with that hitter doing well if he's the only guy in the other team that does. So it does work. It's very taboo. I understand why, but it isn't something that I shy away from. I just let the optimizer decide. It usually doesn't do that for me anyway. If I was going to randomly stack teams off of both sides, now watch, that's important because I'm going to narrow these teams down big time. Maybe take some 3x2, 4x-X, maybe a little bit of 4x3. Let's do about 10% forced. Let's do a good 50% here. And let's put the other 40% on the smaller stacks. Again, the smaller stacks, 3x2x2, 3x3x2, these things are starting to spread out a little bit. They're a little bit more insulated. We can get away with that in these 100-man leagues. You're not typically going to get away with that unless you hit every piece really, really hard in a nickel MME type of situation. But in some of these, smaller tournaments, 100, 200, 500, 1,000-man type GPPs, this methodology does tend to work pretty well. Now, I would uncheck these teams. Like I said, the teams that I'm interested in, maybe Tampa Bay, LA for sure, maybe Minnesota, Houston for sure, Milwaukee for sure. These 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams. So I would put about a 25% max on there. That's going to force these teams to mix and match, obviously, randomly. That's fine. I might even do 30%, but I wouldn't mind seeing somebody else mix in. I want the big 3 teams that I can get, but again, I can control that over here on this side where I can say I only want to see LA, Houston, Milwaukee stacks for my 100-man leagues. I don't care who they necessarily mix with. I'd like them to mix with each other, but if it takes Houston mixing with Minnesota to make it work, I'll consider it. Here, I don't want to see anybody in, say, more than 40% of my lineups because that's going to force me to choose these 3 teams, right? 40% here, 40% here, and then 20% here, whatever it ends up being. And then I'm just going to bang out 20 lineups, and we're going to see what we get. I'm fine-tuning these more and more by hand. The more I'm watching game logs, the more I'm getting a feel for what these guys do. Oops, one other thing to talk about anyway, is your pitchers. I will narrow this pool down. Instead of checking it all back, Verlander, Woodruff, Montas, I don't think I need anybody else. I think anybody else is kind of taking a chance. So, and I don't need to take much of a chance in a 100-man league to win it. As long as one of those three pitchers, has a good day, I'm pretty good to go. So there's 50% Verlander, 50% Woodruff. It's the only two it's using. Totally fine with me. It's using a lot of Bro, so if I wanted to, I can cut him back down to say 30%, being that he's going to be relatively chalky, and then I can run it again. I don't know if I would do that or not. You might go all in on the guy. 2000, if he's hitting well, he's basically a free square, so that's good too. It doesn't really matter how you make this work. This is your fingerprint at this point. So if I'm looking at what, three Rays, two Milwaukee Brewers, Juan Soto, who I might not be using tonight. It's not a great pitching matchup. So if I wanted to change this lineup out, I can bring in a Kyle Tucker, Christian Yelich, Mountcastle, Brantley, whatever. Let's say I did Yelich, and now I'm 1, 2, 3 Brewers, 1, 2, 3 Rays with a one-off in Ohtani and a one-off in Corey Seager. That lineup's fine for this type of situation. There's 3 Brewers. There's no correlation here at all, so I probably would not use that lineup. 1, 2, 3, 4 Brewers, 3 Angels with Juan Soto again. I might sub him out. I can't use Milwaukee this time, but Byron Buxton makes for a good play. So now that I've changed it, that might be a lineup that I would run in a 100-man league. 1, 2, 3 Houston, 1, 2, 3 Milwaukee with a twin, and Soto again. It loves Juan Soto in these upper lineups. So I don't think he's in a great spot, but there's a Mike Trout sub in for him. See, I can hand tweak these lineups the way that I want to run them, and then I can come back through here and I can pick and mix and match what I like. There's 4 Brewers, 3 Angels again with a Byron Buxton one off. That's fine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 1, 1 is 2 Houston guys, Gurriel and Pena. That's fine. Hunter Dozier as a one off is fine. An isolated lucky home run there. 1, 2, 3. 2 Brewers, 2 Houston, 3 Houston, 2, 3 Rays, 3, 3, 2. Again, fine. It's using the teams that I want to use. These lineups should mostly appeal to me. I may not want to see a 9-hole hitter in there, but sometimes that's what it takes to make it work. So these are the kind of, and Jeremy Pena can do stuff, right? Like he's posted some good scores, so we're okay there. But this is just generally how I'm going to go through picking these lineups. And when I look at the stacks, especially the combinations of stacks, I've got a lot of Houston, Milwaukee, a good bit of LA, Milwaukee, and this is what I want to see: Houston, LA, these 3 teams, and then some Houston, Tampa, some Milwaukee, Minnesota, LA, Tampa Bay, a little bit of secondary team mixing in. Maybe that lineup will appeal to me, but I'm going to pick 2 or 3 of these lineups and throw them in those 100-man leagues, and over time, I'm going to be competitive. I'm going to be close to cashing, and occasionally I'm going to pop a victory in one of those, and that's going to be enough to make me profitable over time. Is it something where I'm going to turn, $3 to $5 a day into, thousands of dollars and pay my electric bill and stuff like that? Or, no, that's not the idea. But we're going to grind up over time, and the more you grind, then you step up to the $2, step up to the $5. The more you grind over time, the more you can find yourself starting to increase that outlay, that monetary investment, to the point that you can start considering paying some bills or something like that with some of the money, because the edge is definitely there for you to take advantage of if you can learn to follow these simple systems that generate competitive lineups. This is just one way to do it. So if this appeals to you, of course, talk to me at Discard, dfsarmy.com, and use that coupon code DFSARMY to get a 10% off discount when you come inside. Say hello. Love to talk to you. Love to help you make your game a better game in the world of daily fantasy sports. Peace out, homies. We'll talk to you soon.